Now, here is one of the hardest thing to do when you're designing or when you're refining the sketch of your creature. But it's one of the most important things of the design process. And it's to decide where to add the details and decide. I mean, we're not going to add details yet, but at this stage, it's good to start thinking about it. And the most important thing is to work on the transition so that you don't end up with a very lumpy creature, which is what I currently sort of have in here. So I'm going to try to work on isolated pieces or areas of the creature to think about, okay, these are the areas that I'm going to add more details to. These are the areas that I could do with more kind of like a plain sort of patterns in here. And as I do that, I can refine it. So for example, let's focus on this area right here. And I'm going to do that with larger brushes. And so I'm going to think about the flow as well. So right now, this is a mess. I'll bring in my Epic pen, try to show you where my head is at the moment and what I'm thinking about. So right now we have this very clear line here, this bumpy area. Then we have some other stuff going on here. And we have this clear division here on the eye. I'm not even going to look at the top one because the top one is even more bumpy, right? And this is like the nature of this workflow. Like it's very rare that you're not going to have this type of situation, but that's why I want to address it, because it is one of the most important things to make sure that you don't end up with a creature that is a bunch of like irregular shapes and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look professional. So let's say that these are all the lines that I can identify, or the different volumes that I can identify on my creature, right? So looking at this, I think, okay, let's think about what's the flow of the entire character. Let's think about what the potential anatomy would look like. And you don't have to be an expert in anatomy, just like simple things that that make sense, like common sense, right? If you, for example, this jaw is open, so I'm thinking it would be good to have some sort of like a straight line from the back of the head going this way, and that's the one that sort of pulls the things to open. So in this context, this will be I don't know, like a tendon or something pulling that thing to open. Same thing here. We're gonna try to maintain this sort of like a straight line. There might be something here that is visible. So this is the type of things you might not have to do the same type of shapes, obviously, but this is the type of things that I'm thinking as I refine the volumes, which is what we're doing, or trying to refine the transitions. Another thing, we'll do it with a different color. Another thing is thinking about the shapes and the areas and how you can simplify them. So if I were to divide this into the top section of the creature, roughly, I mean, this is an approximation. It might not be like this. This is kind of like the top area of the head, or the top area of the head of the creature, right? But there might be other areas in here that might be a little bit more fleshy, like that, and maybe this part, and maybe this part as well, and maybe something that is pure bone, like so. So identifying those areas or those sections of your creature, even if you're not 100% sure how you're going to resolve it later, it also gives you an idea of how you can polish things. Because if I think, okay, this top area, let's work with these lines, like so for a second. I can think, okay, this green thing or this green area is more of the cranium, so it should be a little bit cleaner than what I have here. So I'm gonna add volumes in here, maybe use the Alt to push things in, and you see how slowly I'm refining that shape to simplify it. So this is what I say is one of the hardest thing, especially in this technique, because adding details and adding those pieces that we added is such an easy thing that you can go like, okay, what's the point of adding all those pieces if I'm going to remove the view, or like if we're going to change the way that they look. But that is exactly the point. The pieces that we created are just an indication of where things can go, but it's up to you as a designer to go like, okay, I got what this initial shape is giving me. Now I need to refine it to make it look more polished and make it look more realistic. So this is what I'm thinking of when I'm doing these things. And I'm just doing it from a single camera angle, which is not ideal, but just to show you that this is what I'm what I'm trying to achieve, and that's what I would recommend you do as well. So thinking about these, massive or these masses of the head, let's say, and how this harder shell, this top thing that protects the head, sort of merges or transition into more of a softer area, like around the cheekbones, for example, or these areas right here. That could give you a very good indication of how to polish and in what direction. So that's one thing to think about. Another thing would be the flow, and I refer to the flow as essentially the lines and the lines of actions within the character if we treat it as a composition. So right now I have this very sort of clear line right here. We have this very curvy line in here. We have obviously the beak. So very curvy things, very extreme lines. So I want to maintain those lines. So for example, if I follow this line like this, that sort of breaks it a bit, like this shape. It's not bad. I can refine it a bit better, but it sort of breaks. Let's do it with a different color. So the blue one, sorry. So if I follow this line, it's kind of like a broken line, but I'll talk about this in a second. Same thing with this one. I mean, these shapes are kind of like broken. There's another one here that could be, broken line. So it's not about like converting everything or every line to be super clean, right? It's about having a good balance and a good contrast between those lines. So if you have a concave line, or maybe let's go ahead and do that. If you have like a sort of semi-straight line in one side of the head, right? Then the other one could be a bit more bumpy, right? So you work with the balance and you use the contrast between one side and the other. I'm going to clear this up, and I'll start doing a bit more of sculpting. But I want to show you this because now I think it's an important thing before we get into details, but I think it's going to be very important. So I have these two examples here. So this is the creature that we created for the workshop, right? And I just want to show you the concept of what I just explained or what I talked about, and how it is applied, let's say, in something that is a bit more polished already. Because it's a concept, it is an idea of balancing details, balancing areas of rest, contrast between curvy lines or sharp lines or details, and like I said, areas of rest. How to balance those things as we develop or we polish the concept even before we add details. So this is an example of the type of areas that I thought we can I could maintain as relatively polished. So we still have details. If you look at let's say the top of the head, the green areas are flatter versions, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be completely polished. It's just that in the context of this creature, there is an area that is fairly plain and simple with a few details, bumps or whatever, compared to something that has a bit more of an extreme contrast. So you have all these lines coming into the center, and then they sort of fade into an area that it still has details, but it's a lot simpler in a way, or flatter. So this is something that we do at the current stage that we're doing right now, before even we go to details, so that we can clearly define those areas. And then when we get to detailing, we can just kind of like sharpen certain details, basically. So this is an example of areas of rest versus areas of details. And, it's very clear here as well on the shoulder area, even though the entire bust has the same texture, the same sort of pattern, let's say, of like this wrinkly skin. There's sort of some areas that have a lot more details, and the folds of the skin or the wrinkles are a bit more pronounced and a bit bigger. So that creates a bit of contrast. So if I were to just create the same sort of level of deep crevices between all of the parts, it just becomes busy and you don't know where to look at, right? So that's why I said treat the character as a composition. Now, this is the other side of the coin. Like, this is what I was talking about, between using lines that are clean and kind of like simpler and curvy versus other ones that are very sharp. So I think the most visible one is the curvature of the spine here of the creature, right? In comparison to this line that sort of like breaks, I don't know, it's kind of like a fold of like some flickering things. I don't know how to describe it. It's a slightly different texture or different material, let's say, of the skin. So it's like a rougher leather in a way. And that sort of finishes in this very, curvy, like the purple line, curvy area. So it's a contrast between that sort of line, this sort of lines, basically. So that is something that at this stage is really good to keep in mind. And what I would say about that is that it's not, I'm not conscious nowadays. I don't consciously think about those things. It's just that it comes with experience, I suppose. So as you do it, you think, okay, this doesn't look right. Let's just simplify it a bit more, or let's add more details here. So it's something that I'm not constantly thinking about. Like, okay, I should do, if I do a line in here like this, I make sure that I do another one like that. I don't work like that. That's not a conscious decision. But every now and again, I sort of like step back, look at everything, and go, yeah, that's kind of like working, but this may be a better way to, let's say here, it's like, okay, this is working, but I don't know why I have this cut in here. This maybe should be an entire volume, right? And then that helps with that sort of idea of keeping everything, let's say, clean here, and then you add a little bit of details here at the back, right? Hopefully, this is somehow practical advice or practical step. But I know it can be vague. It's just one of those things that unless you do it and you practice it a lot, there's no like a magic formula. Like click this button and then you'll have those nice balance in the design. Okay, for example, here I'm going to start thinking about how anatomically this might work. Again, so you have the spine sort of going through here, and let's say if these are like another section of another set of arms, you might have you might have two clavicles like this, and then maybe another one here. So this could be another clavicle, although it's a little bit far from the shoulder, right? But anyway, so this would be kind of like what I'm thinking in terms of the bone structure, even if it is not perfect. But then you have the trapezius sort of going forward, connecting here. I mean, this is not very a great thing. I guess what I'm saying, let's clear this up. What I'm saying is that these lines that I have here, they don't really make much sense, right? So I want to have something that is more like this. So I'll just sculpt it because I think it's gonna be easier. So I'm gonna work on the transitions and unify these two pieces, right? That, remember, they came from the initial sketch or blockout, but this is a good example of a decision making based on the functionality of the design. So I'm gonna smooth this out, and that started to look a little bit more realistic. Let's create that sort of union here at the top. And I'm just going to continue, make sure that I have a nice flow. And I'm constantly smoothing. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm just adding a couple of volumes to keep things clean, adding and then smoothing straight away. I'm not focusing on details, just the forms is the most important thing. So just focus on forms. Don't be shy to override what you think is a detail. So if you have like a nice cut or a nice line and you just go over it and work on the volume, don't be constrained to the lines that look like very definitive, I guess, on the design. So I'm just thinking about how the two scapulas would work here. I think I keep saying clavicle before. Sorry about that. It's not the clavicle, it's the scapula. Yeah, so I'm just thinking about how that scapula would work and what is the bony protrusion that you could see. Thinking that there's one here, maybe, but then there's another one right below it. How that would work if it has two arms. And also don't be afraid of push things in using the Alt key to push that. I guess one of the key practical things to do here is just to always, as you add or subtract, just always use the smooth brush to keep things clean. Again, don't worry about like overriding certain lines. Like if you compare, let's say this, if you compare this with this right here, you see it's a lot cleaner in terms of the shapes, and you start to see how everything sort of fits together. But the important part, I would say, is of this stage is concentrating on those transitions, making sure that it doesn't look like a bunch of pieces put together, which is the chaotic part of the entire process, that everything has has unity or feels like it is part of the same thing. So that is one of the crucial points, I would say. I'm also thinking that the neck needs a bit more meat. This is something else that I mentioned at the beginning of yesterday lesson, that sometimes you get too focused on the muscles, which is great as a practice, but there's much more than, or not much, but there's a lot more than, not a lot more either. There's more than just bones and muscles. So the fat areas, the fat deposits, or extra skin, all of that changes the volumes, and that changes um the not the anatomy, but the way that you read the form. So don't concentrate just on the muscle. So what I'm saying is that right now I'm kind of like tweaking or polishing what it could be the sternocleidomastoid, that long name for that muscle neck that you see always, that's very prominent. But I'm not gonna make the perfect one coming here from the back of the back of the ear going into the clavicle, and then like splitting it here because you have like sort of two heads, that muscle, right? So I don't want to do it exactly like that because it is not an écorché, right, of a creature. I just want to make a suggestion of it. Like I know that the bone or the muscle is there, but I'm not gonna refine it exactly to show that muscle because there's fat around it. There's some other, it's a creature, so it's not gonna be perfect. I mean, it could be perfect, but it's not gonna be perfectly a humanoid creature, or a humanoid anatomy. Right, so I use my damp standard brush as a quick way of cutting and marking things. It doesn't mean that it's gonna be like this sort of stylized thing, but then I can use my clean builder brush and really focus on those volumes. So for example, I don't think this this area right here is working as an indentation, so I'm gonna push that and smooth that out. So slowly we're gonna start refining things and making it look a bit better. So that's what I'm looking at here. So you see I mean, this is a great example of the balance and the the perfection of nature, and how everything is really balanced in terms of design, the proportions. I don't know if I can use my Epic pen to paint on top of pure ref. Let's give it a go. So pay attention to the proportions here, right? That's sort of like golden ratio between, let's say, the details of this part of the mantis and the next one, where this finishes, and then all of this area. And then you have like a contrast between colors and texture as well. So all of these looks very, bony and bumpy. And this one has a bit more of a flat surface with some spikes, some tiny little spikes. So this type of thing, it doesn't mean that in terms of reference, you need to create the same shape. It's just looking at those little things to infuse your design with something that looks similar. That's what I find really valuable at this stage. I guess one thing that I would say as well is this technique of adding pieces will make shapes very prominent. So another tricky thing that is important to keep an eye on is the subtleties. So you see how I just very quickly smooth that sort of pictorial shape into the rest of the body, because I don't want it to be like super muscular, right? It might be like an agile creature, but then again, if it is like a flyless creature, a very simple pictorial might work. Although if it is a creature that might fly, then those muscles must be really, really, you know, toned, because those are the ones that help with the movement. So those are the type of things that I'm thinking through as I go. All right. I think one thing I'm missing that I quite like are some kind of like ears, just so that it is not such a bird thing. Because birds, the ears are like just a little hole in there. So I just want to try that for the sake of, see if it works. So I want to push that like that and just have a quick idea. This is a quick prototype of my ears. Nah, that's not gonna work. Nah, that's not gonna work. So I do that, all the time. This is more like a helmet thing. So the reason I'm doing this is because I think it has a very cool profile, but the front is not so much as cool. But it doesn't mean that I have to change it. I mean, if you think about it, I think it's the bald eagle, the one with the white head, the American um, eagle. That's why you don't see so many pictures of that eagle from the front. It's always like from the side, because from the front that eagle doesn't look as powerful and stoic as they usually do, because they have like there's like the hairs, not the feathers, sort of like spiked out, so it looks a bit funny from the front. So I'm gonna use that reference as my justification of why the front is not as as crazy um, as the side view. And I'll probably just do a side view render anyway, because that's the shape that I like. And I'm using the move brush just to adjust little tweaks to exaggerate and work on the proportions a bit. And you'll notice that I've been just using the clay brush, smooth brush. Now I'm using the move brush. I haven't used anything crazy in terms of different brushes or anything like that at this point. The damn standard brush, at some point I use it as well. And also that I haven't changed my resolution, or I haven't redynamized things. And that's a good sign that you're not making, I mean, you can, if you want to, do a bunch of large changes. Like you could say, you know what, let's go for this shape, right? And then at this point, you will redynamize. But I don't think, since I was happy with the blockout, I don't think I need to do those large changes. So that way I can keep my resolution the same and I don't have to redynamize that often. Okay, so I think I'm happy with this refinement.